G'day, Michael here. I've just finished assembling this machine, my little Prusa dual extruder turnout. I've had quite a few issues along the way, and I thought I'd do this video while it's still fresh in my head to minimise the number of things I'll forget. And also, if you're looking at assembling a machine like this, maybe a bit of a heads up to what you might be in for, so you can be a little bit more prepared perhaps. Now, the machine that I bought has got some improvements on the original. Now, with this machine, these parts are actually metal. They're nicely folded, looks like about 1.5mm steel. The video doesn't show it up very well because it's all black. Oh, there you can see that the folded metal components in here. Now those components are a big improvement on what they did have in the instruction manual for assembly. That's the one I downloaded from the website, by the way, the assembly instructions. So it should be their latest. But because the instructions differ dramatically from this machine, I had to really join some dots. The packages were all, the numbering of the parts was slightly different to what the instructions were. And the print head assembly was dramatically different. They had a whole lot of 3D printed parts, and the metal parts that this is made out of have not, they're not in the manual or the instruction manual. I'll turn that around. Now what I had was, after I'd figured out how the bits go together, I'd realised this part here is actually back to front, and they've made a little extension to touch a limit switch, which is this one here. Right? So it was a funny little plastic extension, and it was a big job for me to try and reverse that plate, because basically there's a lot of assembly required to get to that point. So I ended up making up this bit of clear polycarbonate. But if you do get one of these machines with exactly these kinds of parts, that goes on the other way around. Yeah, I'm not sure how much help that is for you, but this is what I have to show. The other thing that was different is the power supply. The pinouts for the power supply are different on this to the one that's in the instruction manual. That's okay because they are labelled up the top here, which probably doesn't show in this video as to what they are. So I'll work that out quite nicely. The wiring is all provided in generic lengths, so you've got to try and work out how to tidy up the lengths. And of course I've done my best to, cable tie things together and make a reasonable neat job of it. But other than that, the wiring was actually quite nice, quite a straightforward process. This limit switch, the way it's mounted, is a little bit tight. I don't know whether you can see that. The wires have to bend in a funny angle to get around the support that's below it. That could be an improved design. A big problem I had is that, I don't know whether this will show up, let's see if I can get it to focus. Come on, focus. It's focusing on the reflection. Try that. Can you do that? Boy, oh boy. Focus. Well, I don't know, you have to trust me because I can't seem to get this thing to focus. Yeah, no, it's not happening. Okay, the laser cutting is not square through the section. And as a result, it's meant that from above, this frame is twisted out of shape. So that this axis, the x-axis here, does not run at a right angle to the y-axis. I'll have to do something to correct that. Maybe I can show that. There maybe? I don't know whether you can see that. I'm going to try and make that as visible as possible. Focus. Yeah, it probably doesn't show up very well there. Better lighting maybe? Yeah, you can see it gets, the gap here gets wider towards this end versus that end. So I'm going to have to correct this frame probably by putting on a base and forcing it. there's quite a bit of flexibility in this frame. That's another thing I don't really quite like about it. Can I show that? Forgive me, this is very hard to try and do with one hand on the camera. Oh, well, you have to just trust me. You can actually deflect it out of shape. Or in this case, I can deflect it to being square. All right, so there the major issues I think I had was the squareness of the laser cutting through the section, which I can't show on the video, unfortunately. The parts being different from the instructions by quite a bit. The power supply being different pinouts. I have to say the parts actually added up reasonably well. The display went together quite well. Again, the parts are a little bit different. I would have preferred to have some sort of box around this, which I may yet print one up. I think most people, when they get these kit machines, end up modifying them to suit themselves. That is a plus and a minus with these kit machines. You've got an open architecture, so you can change things. Being able to change things means they're kind of generically made, and you can customize them to suit yourself. But of course, you have to get to understand how they tick before you can go off and modify them. And you know, everything comes with a plus and a minus. Having the ability to change the machine to suit yourself. You can see that's been designed to be mounted in a different way as well. Focus. You can see here that there's been designed for some laser cut joints, which aren't being used in this particular part. Yeah. As I was saying, the open architecture. You can change the software, you can change the hardware, you can change quite a few attributes of the machine. In fact, I intend to move this vertical axis to the right so as to see these shafts are quite a bit longer. I could use the extra width here. With my two print heads use a little bit of width of the platen here. I'll only be able to get about 175 millimeters of true workable area from this machine, and yeah, the 175 mil work area is not what I intended. I intended to have 200 millimeter cube, so to get that I need to get more travel in this axis. But because we'll be able to work on the firmware, I can change the firmware settings on the machine to include the extra width, which I may add at a later date. I may also not. I might just leave that as it is. And I just noticed this part I need to tighten. Yeah, I hope my one-handed wobbly video isn't driving you too mad. But they were the things that I noticed with assembling this machine. I think I've done about as neat a job as I can of the wiring. It is a little bit complex. You have to allow things to move correctly, so you've got to play with focus. You have to play with how the parts may move to make sure that everything will travel properly without hitting limits and pulling cables too tight. That's about at its limit there, but that's about as good as I can do. On the instruction manual, they have the cable routed slightly differently, but I don't like the way that was done. There's potential for a pinch on the product. Well, all right, I think that's it. Enough waffle from me. Yeah, feel free to like, share, subscribe, ask a question, leave a comment. Bye for now.